Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
What's up, Knight fans? Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. I know it is early in the week. Jeff Sharon, Brian Murphy, and Eric Lopez here with you, but we're doing a very special American Athletic Conference Baseball Tournament Preview Edition for you. This will be a quick little podcast before, well, at least 2/3 of us head out to Clearwater for the tournament. And logistically, things begin to get a little weird. But we have a lot to talk about, in particular, having to do with that. Eric Lopez is here. Brian Murphy is here. How are you, gentlemen?
Fantastic.
Elo, are you there, or are you like asleep?
I am listening. No, I'm here.
You're listening. Okay. Well, we got a lot to talk about here. Blackandgoldbanneret.com is the place to be. You can follow us on Twitter at UCF_Banneret, Facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret. You can follow us each individually at Jeff_Sharon, Eric Lopez, Elo, and Spokes_Murphy. All right, let's dive right in on it, shall we? 2019 American Athletic Conference Baseball Championship is set at Spectrum Field in Clearwater, Florida, home of the Philadelphia Phillies during the spring. UCF finishes the regular season at 34-20, 11-13 in the American Athletic Conference. Good enough for the 6th seed by virtue of beating Houston 2 out of 3 in the final weekend, including an 11-10, 11-inning thriller. One of the weirdest, most bizarre, most really exciting baseball games you'll probably ever see to finish out. And it turns out that was a huge break for UCF because, just like we were thinking right before the series, fellas, UCF ends up catching a break here in terms of who they are with in the bracket. So the tournament is they divide the field into 2 4-team double elimination brackets, and the survivors of each of those brackets play in a one-game winner-take-all championship. The tournament starts Tuesday, May 21st. We're recording this on Monday night. And UCF is in a bracket with Memphis, who they beat 2 out of 3. Cincinnati, who they lost 2 out of 3 to, but the third one was a walk-off home run, and it was at Cincinnati. And then Tulane, who they beat 2 out of 3. On the other side, you have ECU as the 1, UConn as the 4, Houston's the 5, and Wichita State the 6. USF was eliminated. They finished in 9th in the conference. Only the top 8 get to move on to the tournament. So, looking back at how the series finished out with Houston, the Knights are hot. They're was it 8 out of 9? Brian, is that right?
Believe so, yes.
So they're peaking at the right time, aren't they?
Well, yeah, and you can talk about how the series against Houston broke right for them. Again, it's sort of beneficial in a weird way, I believe, for them not to have swept Houston, which would have put them up into the 5 seed, and then they would have had that they would have been basically in ECU's side of the bracket. And really, right, you just don't want to be on ECU's side of the bracket. This is the ECU team that set the conference all-time record for conference victories. They have 20 wins in conference season, so you want to stay away from them. And as you've documented, they're facing 3 teams. They're possibly facing 3 teams on their side of the bracket that they've either beaten or competed really well against in Cincinnati. So, but no, I think I wrote about this last night. They are probably the second hottest team in this conference they're probably the hottest team in this conference right now outside of the Pirates, with the way they've just sort of run off victories here. And again, I'll restate it for like the 1,000th time. It's amazing how this team has sort of come out of the ashes after really being dead to rights after that walk-off loss with 2 outs in the 9th inning at Cincinnati when they were 5-10 in conference to be where they are now. It's a pretty semi-miraculous turnaround.
I would say it's even more miraculous than we think, especially when you think that I think that UCF right now is the favorite to come out of the bottom of the bracket, or at least they should be. And here's why.
You can definitely argue that.
Yeah. So I looked at the RPI, and I sent this out on Twitter. I looked at the RPIs of the 8 teams in the field and split them up by the brackets that they're in. In the top of the bracket, you've got ECU with an RPI of 4, UConn at 29, Houston at 44, Wichita State 95. In the bottom of the bracket, Cincy, who's the number 2 seed, they actually finished the regular season 3 games under 500 overall. Their RPI is 108. Tulane's RPI is 94. UCF is 42. Memphis is 124. So what that means is UCF has not only the highest RPI on their side of the bracket, they have that by 52 spots.
We should also,
go ahead.
The RPI has been moved now. That's UCF is now at 44, but the point remains. I mean, your point remains. Tulane, by the way, is at 96 now. This is as of Monday night.
All right. So even so, this is one of the things I think, and double check me on this. UCF is playing in a bracket with 3 other teams whose RPI is about the same or lower than the worst team in the other half of the bracket. Okay? So, I mean, that tells you that their path to the championship might be, pretty easier than people think. Okay, so the most updated RPI, ECU's 5, UConn's 28, Houston's 40. There's your top 3 right there. They're all on the same side of the bracket. UCF is 44, like you said. Still tops on their side of the bracket. Then you have Wichita at 91. So 4 of your top 5 are on the other side. I mean, it's amazing how that all worked out.
But here's the thing, right? We're making all this, and you know what? If we're in Memphis right now, they'd be saying the same thing. Hey, it's a pretty good draw. And Cincinnati's probably saying the same thing. And Tulane, same thing. And Brian can speak to this. Yes, UCF had success against Tulane. They won 2 out of 3. They won 2 out of 3 against Memphis. Law was 1 pitch away from winning the Cincinnati series. It wasn't like it was a one-sided series. I think this bracket is completely wide open. And I think you could make a case for all 4 teams to get to the championship game. And I guarantee you I think this is one of the reasons why this is maybe the most compelling American Conference Baseball Championship series they've had since the league began in 2014, because you can make a case for all 4 teams to make a run. And Murph, you can speak to this, having watched the team the whole year. It's not like, UCF's got flaws here that's got issues here in this bracket that they could have some problems against Tulane or Memphis offense when they go up against their offense and things like that. It's not like there's a clear advantage.
No, I mean, Tulane, as much as they're great offensively and they have the player of the year, they have the obvious player of the year in Cody Hosey. Their pitching leaves a lot to be desired. And so, it's about, does UCF get the pitching they've gotten from guys like Chris Williams for most of the second half of the season, especially Jordan Spicer, Grant Sherman, who will probably pitch game 2 of this conference tournament for them. Do they step up and kind of pitch the way they've pitched recently? And then does the top of the lineup for UCF, like Micah, Alejo, Osick, Beaver, do they show up? And so it's all up for grabs. But the thing I think we're all trying to say is this is so much of an easier draw because either of these 4 teams can make it out. But if you're on ECU side of the bracket, you're kind of dead as soon as you run into them.
There's murderer's row over there. I mean, and Eric, you were talking about from your article before the Houston series that, to you, UConn, Houston, and Tulane, they were right there on the bubble. And I mean, if you're UConn and Houston, you gotta be like, well, I mean, yes, we have to get through ECU. That's probably going to clinch us an at-large spot anyway. So would you, if that's the case, would you rather be one of those two, or would you rather be UCF with, as I don't want to say soft, but as clear a path to the championship game as possible?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, it depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking to improve your RPI, you're on the other side of the bracket's going to improve that. Like UCF's not going to get any quality wins on their bracket until if they get to the final, maybe. But on the other hand, you look at the situation like Houston and Connecticut are going to open against each other. So one of them is going to lose and already be in the loser's bracket game. And let's say it is against Wichita State. There's pressure to win that game because if they lose that game, whoever loses the Houston-UConn game has to beat Wichita State. Otherwise, they go 0-2, and that could be curtains as far as the NCAA tournament is concerned. So there is that
worst
risk.
Case scenario is if Wichita State even finds a way to upset ECU.
Which, by the way, we're acting. I know, we're acting like East Carolina is a foregone conclusion. And you both have covered this tournament, Jeff. You've been there every year, just about. If anything, there is no certainty. We've seen top seeds lose early in this conference tournament. We saw this with UCF 2 years ago when they were the number 1 seed and drew East Carolina. That's the thing. There's no certainty here. I think UCF's got a great draw. I agree that they're in the right bracket. I just am not as confident to say, well, this is definitely theirs to lose or anything or make them the heavy favorite because. And Murph knows this. Which Chris Williams are we going to get Tuesday night against Tulane could dictate how this tournament goes? Because, Murph, don't you agree? UCF can dig themselves out of the loser's bracket like maybe an East Carolina can or a Houston or a UConn can.
Yeah, probably that's right. I think that the danger with the loser's bracket, because you still need to have an eye toward the NCAA tournament it's if you lose that first game right out of the gate, then the pressure's all on you. And you probably need to win no fewer than 2 and probably maybe 3 games in a row if you lose that first game. And I don't know. I kind of disagree with the premise of you don't know what you're going to get. Because if there has been if you want to rank the starters that UCF has had over the past couple of months, Grant Sherman's probably my number 1, and then Jordan Spicer's probably been second best, and then Williams is third. Now Williams is starting here because they lined him up this way, going back to last Tuesday at FAU. He's pitched there at FAU, did not pitch well, had no fastball command really, and got hit around. But he's lined up on full rest to go on Tuesday, and then Sherman will follow him, and Spicer will follow him. So if they lose the first game. It's not that I fear what's behind Williams because they had the pitching. They had the pitching to win a couple of games. It's just the pressure really builds up on you if you lose that first game.
Well, and the bullpen, Murph, the bullpen is my concern when you get in a loser's bracket. How many arms you got to throw each game? Because we've seen this team blow leads. We were there on Saturday night. They had an 8-1 lead. They couldn't hold it. They had 12 walks as a staff.
Yeah,
but that's the thing that's unpredictable.
Saturday night's game against Houston was sort of a microcosm of UCF's last month. It was the third game in the past 3.5 weeks in which they won the game by a single run after leading the game by at least 6. It's just a weird quirk that this team has. Like, no lead is safe. So just, I don't know what it is. But you're right. The bullpen is still shorthanded. There's probably only 3 or 4 guys they really trust. They almost used Chris Williams on Saturday night. Maybe Louis Ferrer, who pitched that 11th inning, could have gone maybe an inning more, and then they would have to go into Williams there. They warmed him up, but fortunately, Brandon Hernandez came through, and they didn't have to use Williams, so he's on full rest. Yeah. But the bullpen is not deep, especially deep, but the starting rotation has been better, and I think with those top 4 hitters with Alejo, Micah, Osick, Beaver, and possibly Dalton Wingo, that you've got a good semblance of an offense mixed with some pretty solid and dependable starting pitching.
one of the other things that you have to contend with too is the format of the tournament as well. So it starts Tuesday with 4 games starting at 9 a.m. and then they reward you if you're in the winner's side of the bracket. You win, you get a day off. But if you're on the loser side, you got to come back the next day. The elimination games are on Wednesday. The winners bracket games are Thursday, and then they go back to the elimination games on Friday, semifinals on Saturday, and then they just play the whole thing off until you get 2 teams left. But you do get punished for losing in this particular case. Not that you're going to have pitchers going back to back, but it's nice to get that extra 24 hours of rest. No.
Oh, absolutely. And again, we talk about the pressure. Now, not only if you lose that first game, do you need to win the next couple of games to have a chance at the NCAAs? You got to come right back, and maybe that first game you lose is an 8-7 game that you got to use 4 or 5 arms, and now you're really shorthanded. So yeah, it's a huge benefit. I will say one thing I wanted to point out too about this matchup with Tulane. So as UCF sends out Chris Williams, Tulane's probably going to send out Caleb Roper, a right-hander, a senior right-hander. He has he has an ERA above 6 in conference, but as fate would have it, by far his best start of the year in conference came against UCF. It was the opening game at Tulane in their series a few weeks ago. He struck out 11 over 8 innings, giving up 1 earned run. So, other teams have hit him really hard. UCF had a lot of problems against him. We'll see what happens this time. It also, since I mentioned that, I should mention that Chris Williams was spectacular. One of his best starts of the season was at Tulane the following day, which he allowed 2 runs over 7 innings. So both these pitchers have had successes against these offenses in the last couple of weeks. We'll see if those offenses have learned anything.
All right. We'll pick up that conversation actually here in a little bit. We'll take a quick break, and we'll dive in a little bit more in depth into whoever else is on UCF side of the bracket in the American Athletic Conference Baseball Championship, and where we'll be for the week as well. Stick around. I'll be right back after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast, our special American Athletic Conference Baseball Tournament Preview Edition. UCF is the 6th seed in the American Tournament at Clearwater. It'll be played at Spectrum Field. And you can catch all of the action on the American Digital Network. If you go to theamerican.org, also facebook.com/theamerican, you'll be able to catch all these games, including a quadruple header on Tuesday, May 21st. UCF's opener will be the nightcap against number 3 Tulane, 47 minutes following Game 3, which is between Memphis and Cincinnati. That's scheduled for 4 p.m. Eastern time. So those are the 4 teams in UCF side of the bracket: UCF, Memphis, Cincinnati, and Tulane. And well, we talked about the RPIs, we talked about the matchups and all that, but you mentioned right before the break, Brian, that Tulane, we don't know what we're going to get. Obviously, your Friday starters are going to go in that first game, or at least that's what we're expecting, at least as of this point. Is that right on Tuesday?
Well, not typically. For UCF, you'll have Chris Williams, who's not really their Friday starter, but since they lined him up to pitch last Tuesday at FAU, he's on a full week's rest here.
Yeah. How much does this, if you're Greg Lovelady, how much does this really, what's the ideal setup here for your pitching staff?
This is it, actually. He admitted it.
Okay.
Because, again, they did not want to use Williams in that game Saturday night against Houston, but they almost had to. Yeah. But they didn't. But they were able to stay away from him. and then because Sherman pitched Thursday and Spicer pitched Friday, then at worst you're looking at Sherman on 5 days rest and Spicer on 5 days rest at worst. So you expect
that's if you lose on Tuesday.
If you lose on Tuesday, I mean, at worst you'd have them on 5 days rest. So at least that you have them year full rest, you would get most of the 100% of what you expect out of them, and then you have Chris coming on a full week of rest. So they had their entire starting rotation basically lined up, in a pretty good form, and Lovelady admitted that after the game on Saturday, said it's all lined up the way we want it to.
And I think we have that sound right here. Hang on one second. Here's Greg Lovelady talking about it.
Anyone can beat anybody in our league. I mean, 1 through 8, it's going to be a grind. And, some of you wants to play East Carolina and beat them for the RPI, but obviously they're really good, so you kind of want to stay away. So, I mean, it's kind of like, you really can't control anything. You're going to have to beat everybody at some point, and you just go out there, and who's ever in the other dugout we're going to try to beat.
I believe you do face Tulane to start off. Does that give you confidence knowing you've already beat them?
Yeah, especially with beating them on the road. But we got to be ready. Their offense is obviously potent, and we got to do a better job offensively probably against Roper than we did, and find a way to make adjustments. But we got a lot of film. We've obviously they're fairly fresh in our mind. You play East Carolina or UConn. You almost have forgotten those series by now. But I think Tulane will be fresh in our mind on what they did to us, how they attacked us, and what we got to do to make adjustments.
That's Greg Lovelady talking on Saturday night about the upcoming week. On the other side for UCF, you have Cincinnati and Memphis. Memphis is back in the tournament after a 1-year absence. Last year they didn't qualify. They finished in dead last. Their pitching staff has been kind of inconsistent, to say the least. They finished 10-13 in conference, 27-26 overall. I mean, they did get the shot in the arm on offense, as they seem to do, every single year. But they're going to be again, which Memphis team decides to show up. By the way, the postseason awards came out. Cody Hosey of Tulane was named the Player of the Year. Jake Agnes from ECU is named the Pitcher of the Year. Hunter Goodman was that freshman from Memphis I was mentioning, from Arlington, Tennessee, who is the newcomer position player of the year. Newcomer pitcher was Devon Rodal of Houston. Cliff Godwin, former UCF assistant under Terry Rooney, congratulations on his second Coach of the Year award in the American. For UCF, by the way, Matthew Micah was named first team all-conference at second base. And then also on the second team, Grant Sherman, your boy, Murph, the redshirt senior, was named to the second team, as well as Ray Alejo as an outfielder on the second team as well. I should mention
any issues there, Murph, as far as the awards are concerned there? You have any problems there? Anybody got omitted, or you're good with that?
Yeah, I think I'm fine with that. I think, Tyler Osick is a candidate, certainly. I think he's top 10 in the league in hitting. And the way that Ray Alejo started the year, he could have really earned himself some recognition or more recognition, but he kind of faltered late. So no, I don't have huge qualms about any of those choices.
Interestingly enough, by the way, Joe Genort from South Florida was named first team all-conference first baseman. There was a tie for the first baseman on the second team between Joe Davis of Houston and Spencer Brickhouse of ECU.
That's kind of wild. That was my issue.
That was surprising.
Davis and Brickhouse, to me, should have been the first teamers. I mean,
Brickhouse was the first team DH also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. But Davis is a stud. I mean, Davis is that Houston offense. I mean, Murph and I saw him up close this past week. I mean, he's a stud. I mean, he provides all the power. I would have gone with
credit to Greg Lovelady, because he wanted no part of Joe Davis that entire week, and he walked him out.
Greg Lovelady was giving Joe Davis the Barry Bonds treatment, that bug shoulder, walking him everywhere, anytime. Didn't matter. There was guys on first and second. Didn't matter. Walk him.
And I don't blame him one bit, because when Davis did get a hold of a couple, he hurt UCF a couple of times when he did see pitches to hit.
No question. By the way, Jeffrey, I got to tell you, that Cincinnati-Memphis game you're going to call might be the most intriguing game from the standpoint as you made the good point earlier. you really don't know what you're going to get from either of these teams. These two teams are capable of getting blown out, 12-0, 12-2. They're also capable of beating you 12-7. And I think that's been the story with these two teams.
Yeah.
Like Memphis got destroyed by East Carolina the first two games. They come back the last game of the series and win it 10-9. Cincinnati, I think back to the UCF series, and I remember, I think I was with Murph in the car. We were listening to UCF crushing Cincinnati on that first game of that series. It was like, what, 15-0, Murph? Something like that? And Cincinnati, and I'm thinking, we run rolled them. Run rolled them, and then Cincinnati comes back and wins the series. I think that's the most unpredictable game. You could tell me what's going to happen there, and I'll believe it. You could tell me that's a nail biter, and it goes 14 innings. I'll believe it. I could also see it being like a 13-1 game. I mean, it's really might be the most unpredictable game I think of the four.
Yeah. Well, the last time I called an American Athletic Conference tournament baseball game between Cincinnati and Memphis, it was the highest scoring game in the history of the tournament. It was 15-14 Memphis in 10 innings, and it was really actually one of the most amazing games. The wind was blowing out that day because they were expecting a pretty bad storm system to come in. But I would not be surprised if I saw the same exact situation that time. Interestingly, a note about Cincinnati too. They had no players named to either the first or the second team.
Mm.
I think
they're
the
weirdest. Aren't they the most bizarre number 2 seed ever? Like, are very like you just it's almost like you have to like double check. Like, really, they're the 2 seed. Like, and in a lot of ways that doesn't surprise me because they don't jump out at you, but yet they found ways to win games in the league. It's just very fascinating.
It's amazing that a team that ranks last in the league in offense and 7th in the league in pitching finished second.
7th out of 9 in pitching. They have, and this is another thing. They went 13-19 out of conference. They have no hitters who hit 300 or better.
That's really hard to do in college baseball.
Yeah,
and yet they're the second seed. But I think what it tells you, though, is I think they know how to win close games because they probably, I think the UCF series kind of showed that where, they got blown out in one game. They bounced back, found a way to win the series. I think that's their story. So it's not pretty on paper, but, you find ways to win games. And that's why this whole bracket's fascinating to me because, I think UCF, certainly if they can get to the final, I think they're going to be in the NCAA tournament, whereas everybody else, basically, if they're in the final, they're there to steal a bid. And they could steal a bid from their own conference. And so that's what's so fascinating about it, that I don't know on a daily basis what you're going to get from these teams. And I think that, in a way, describes the 2019 American Conference season. Outside of East Carolina, I don't know if we really know what we're getting from everybody else on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's now, to me, I don't know, Murph, what do you think? Do you think that that's because there was just parity in the conferences here, or do you think that it was just a rough year for the league overall?
No, I don't think there's really another standout team. Like, there's really a lot of these teams have flaws. Like, we're talking about the number 2 team in Cincinnati that has the worst RPI of any team in the league. They have an RPI that's one spot lower than South Florida, who didn't make the tournament.
That's right.
Tulane has a pitcher going tomorrow who is technically their ace, who again had a ERA of 6 in conference, and their pitching staff this year has been awful, and they're the 3 seed. UConn, you expected more of. Really, you expected more of UCF. They've made this late charge, winning 11-14. You're talking about winning close
more from Houston a little bit, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. And you talk about winning close games during this
Houston's
stretch.
a real head scratcher this year, yeah.
During this stretch in which UCF has won 11-14, 6 of the wins are by 1 run. So by hook or by crook, this team is somehow, getting it done.
Yeah, this will be a wild week for sure.
I will say this. I think part of it is I feel like it was a transition year in the league. There was a lot of talent, Murph, that kind of left after last year, right? From a MLB draft standpoint. Cincinnati, I think you have a new head coach at Cincinnati. Memphis is kind of Jeff, you could speak more about Memphis situation, but they're kind of did some changes there a little bit. I feel like some of these teams have kind of been in transition a little bit, especially on the UCF side of the bracket. UCF's got a new pitching coach in Adi this year. So I feel like there's been some tweaks there in the staffs and as well as player personnel. I don't think it's definitely not as strong of a league as it was, say, last year where it had all talent.
Yeah. And the conference RPI, it's a little lower than it was last year, but it's definitely just not as strong. I mean, South Florida doesn't make the tournament because they lost, among other pieces, a first-round pitcher, Shane McClanahan. Wichita State lost the number 3 overall pick in Alec Baum. And so now, really, you look this year, there's probably one first-rounder in this league that's probably Cody Hosey, and he worked himself into that realm. He was nowhere near that quality heading into this season. So that the level of top-end talent, at least looking to the pros, probably isn't there this year as to where it was there a little more last year.
Yeah. And you were mentioning Memphis, Eric. Darren Schoenrock is still there. I mean, they found an absolute gem in Hunter Goodman as the freshman. He hit 332 this year. But when you look up and down their pitching staff, they have the consistent starters from Durham, Alex Hicks, who's been there for a while, and Hunter Smith. But the best ERA out of that group is Durham, who's got a 3.57 and a 4-3 record in 68 innings. Their best pitcher in terms of ERA is Colton Neal, who's basically their closer, a 0.95 earned run average in 18 appearances. He's got 10 saves to his credit. The other issue with Colton Neal is he's actually a position player. and he's kind of as an outfielder, a 5'9" senior from Cordova, which, by the way, coincidentally, he was the guy who, in that crazy 15-14 game against Cincinnati 2 years ago, had retired the last, I think it was 10 Bearcats in that game, and then had the game-winning walk-off single in the 10th. So my first thought on that was that guy, if there was, remember the old Arena Football League, there was the Iron Man of the Year award? They would go to the guy who played both ways. Like Barry Wagner won it every year, I think, for the Orlando Predators. If there was such a thing for the American, I think Colton Neal would win it because he's also a 289 hitter in 194 at bats. So anyway, all right. Like we said, it's going to be a wild tournament down in Clearwater at Spectrum Field. If you're heading down there, as we are, drive safe. Murph, I know you're heading down there on Tuesday. I will be heading down there Tuesday too because I will be tag teaming with Jeff Brightwell and Garrett Woolvard on calling the games for the American Digital Network. I'll be doing any games that Memphis plays in because Jeff Brightwell has to do play-by-play for Memphis radio. That's his regular job. So I will step into the booth when he goes and does the radio. So, and I wanted to say a very special thank you to the folks at the American and the guys with L2 Productions also for inviting me down there for the 4th consecutive year now. It's a real thrill. It's one of the highlights of the year for me to be able to do these games. And I've been sort of kind of a good luck charm, I like to think, for Memphis when they've been there because they made a run all the way to semifinal Saturday my first year there. And then the only thing standing in their way the second time was UConn's really good pitching staff. But the weather should be wonderful in Clearwater this week. We are expecting high 80s to low 90s all throughout the week, mostly sunny to sunny. Nothing more than a 20% chance of rain on Tuesday, and we're not even really expecting that. It's going to be hot and sunny.
Complete opposite of last year. No two.
Yeah.
Where they had to. We will not get to visit Steve Carlton Field or whatever's behind.
Well, I mean, it was interesting facilities to be sure back there, but all the games likely will be played there over at the big field at Spectrum Field, and like we said, UCF schedule, if they are the nightcap, so they will play 47 minutes following the end of Game 3, which is Memphis and Cincy, which will be starting at 4 p.m. They're expecting Eastern time. So you can think UCF probably at least 7 o'clock.
8:30, right?
I would say 7:30 probably to be safe.
7:30 is a quick game, so I don't know. If we're going over under, UCF doesn't start before I'd say over under. I don't think UCF starts before 750, 750.
Okay,
I'll go that.
I agree with that.
You hear that, Trilco? Write it down. That's a new game for the tournament. If UCF loses, they would play Wednesday in the late game. The first game starts at 3 p.m. on Wednesday. That's the first two elimination games. If they win, they would play Thursday in the late game, and then it proceeds to Friday with further elimination games, and then semifinal Saturday. Again, all at Spectrum Field, and you can watch every game of the tournament on the American Digital Network. If you hop over to theamerican.org, they'll have links to all the games and
the
live
final
stats.
will be on ESPN News.
And the final will be on ESPN News. That's right. Scheduled for Sunday at noon. So, we have lots of... Lopez, you coming down?
Yeah, I'm coming later in the week. Unfortunately, I'm very nervous for Murph in regards that you're calling that Cincinnati-Memphis game. Murph might be he might be there in the stadium till 2 a.m. I mean, it could be a long night there. But yeah, I'll be there later. We'll get there later in the week. It's a long process week. I think it's going to be exciting. I mean, keep this in mind.
We'll be hanging out. Murphy, I'll be hanging out on Tuesday night for the nightcap with you. I'll be there.
Yeah, but Frenchie's will be closed by the time that UCF's
No.
That's no fun.
No, you gotta be kidding me. Seriously?
Well,
what happened?
They're not going to keep it open, once the game is over.
No. I'm gonna let the guys know that you're in town and we're gonna have to keep it open.
All right. So let's go real quick here. Let's get real quick here.
Okay.
And what does UCF? I'll ask you both. What does UCF have to do outside of the obvious, which is win the conference tournament to get the automatic bid? What do you see as they have to do to feel good about getting an NCAA tournament at large bid from this tournament?
I'm going to defer to Murph, but I guess I'll go on the record first. I think if UCF wants to feel safe, or as safe as humanly possible, without having to beat ECU on Saturday, they will have to plow through their side of the bracket and not lose any games and not get stuck in the loser's bracket.
I don't think it matters if they lose once. I think it matters the number of wins they rack up, and they need to get 3 if they want to feel good. 2 is at the absolute bare minimum. Remember, this time last year, even after they went 0-2 in the conference tournament, we were still watching other teams and bubble watching and all that stuff. If this team goes 0-2, you can shut it down until February because there's no way they're making the tournament. They don't make it unless they win at least 2 at the bare minimum and probably 3 if they want to feel somewhat safe.
So, Murph, best case scenario, beat Tulane Tuesday, beat, I would imagine, Cincinnati on Thursday, and then maybe beat Tulane again on Friday?
I mean, again, I don't think it matters who. I don't know if because
the opponent doesn't matter, right? The RPI is not.
Right.
You're not getting any help.
Or Saturday, it's just, yeah.
There's not many high RPI wins here, so it's about getting victories. And by the way, we've said this now for a couple of weeks, and we said blatantly on the show last week that UCF needed to win 4 or 5. Well, they did win 2 of 3, so now they would need to win 2 more. And just to be safe, why don't you go get a 3rd? And even Greg Loveland said the same thing, I think, on Friday night after the loss to Houston, saying they know they need to win, probably 3 games. So
yeah.
Well, something to keep in mind. How many upset bids, steal bids, happen elsewhere in college baseball this week? Also, I mean, I think I'm with Jeff. UCF to me has to get to the final for a couple reasons. If they don't get to the final, that means Cincinnati, Tulane, or Memphis which means they're 1 game away potentially from an upset in the final from stealing a bid, and more than likely that'll be at UCF's expense or somebody else's in the league's expense. So I think they got to get to the final. That doesn't matter if they get to the final with 0 loss or 1 loss. I just think they got to get to the final. The other thing you got to root for if you're UCF, I think you would be fine with either UConn or Houston being bowed out early, because that would put them in a real bind there. Maybe you jump them as a possibility as an at large. And I think so. That's why I think you're probably rooting for East Carolina to knock those 2 teams off. I think the worst case scenario would be if East Carolina got knocked off by Houston and Connecticut, for example.
Yeah.
So I think those, which could happen, and I think that's what's going to be so fascinating about this tournament. I think this league's a 3-bid league But I think the question's going to be who are going to be the 3 bids outside of East Carolina, I think is the question. I think that's up for grabs right now because I think Houston and Connecticut and UCF are fighting for at-larges, and then you have a bunch of teams like we've talked about with Tulane. And I think the team that I like a lot is Memphis. I think I'm scared. I think Memphis is the team that would not shock me. I could see a scenario, Jeffrey, where you're calling a Memphis UCF game with the winner to advance to the final. Which
on Saturday?
Memphis, yeah, because Memphis, let me tell you, they got the number 3 offense in the American very quietly. They can hit. They've struggled pitching, but they can hit. And Murph knows this. Memphis will hit you. If they've hit UCF pitching, they'll hit. And I think they might have the best offense in this bracket. I know everybody likes Tulane, but I wonder how much of Tulane's offense was based on home field compared to being on the road, whereas Memphis has hit everywhere. So I think Memphis is a dangerous team here, and I would not be surprised if your Final Four, it's UCF and Memphis on one bracket, and then Houston or Connecticut against ECU in the other.
You're not going to get any argument from me on that one. I would love to call a Memphis UCF game at the tournament or 2. I'll take it. Either way, like we said, theamerican.org is where you want to follow it. Also follow us at blackandgoldbanneret.com. You can follow us individually at Jeff_Sharon, Eric Lopez Elo, Spokes_Murphy. Follow us all at UCF_Banneret on Twitter, Facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret. All right, and I will conclude this special edition by asking you guys real quick, ECU or the field? Eric?
I'm going to take the field just because I do think Houston or Connecticut are capable of knocking off East Carolina. So I'm going to take the field, but obviously East Carolina is the favorite.
Murph?
I'll take ECU. This is not just a team that is great. They're so good. It's also a team that's playing for something. They have not in any way guaranteed themselves a top 8 national seed, which if they make which would give them the host site for a super regional. So they're playing with something. They're going in there with something to play for, and they're already by far the best team in the league. So I'll take ECU.
You're not going to get any predictions out of me. I'm going to pull a Herb Street there and kind of and abstain.
Oh,
but
so what's your final? What's your final pick, Murph?
My final pick is ECU winning that conference tournament against. Oh God, I don't want to say UCF, but they are the second best team.
Whoa!
I mean, it's weird, but like at this point, UCF's probably the best team on that side of the bracket. So as much as it's weird how we've gotten to this point because of what this team was back in like March and some parts of April. Maybe it's ECU and UCF.
You might
Which
be
is,
right.
by the way, a credit to Greg Lovelady and his staff for righting the ship and really turning this around. I mean, let's be honest. We were doing shows a month ago. We thought it was bleak, right? I mean, we pretty much was putting the grave on them. And with all the injuries they've had in the bullpen and the flaws and the struggles they've had to play themselves into this position, the fact that we're having this conversation about UCF possibly playing for the championship and getting into the NCAA tournament, I think is a credit to Greg and the staff and the job they've done.
I said explicitly on the show back during the doldrums that I said explicitly this team's not very good, and it just didn't look very good. Like the pitching was a mess and the offense was sort of a half good. And so to see where it is now after the last 14 games, where they've won 11, 6 by 1 run, some where they had huge leads and then blew them, and just crazy things that have happened. Guys have stepped up. It's nuts that we're here, and yet they are again the second hottest team heading into this tournament. And we all know that in playoff settings, it's not the best team, but often the hottest team that wins.
And they are 8 of 9 at least coming in. We'll see if that carries over into Tuesday as the Knights play against Tulane and their run in the 2019 American Athletic Conference Baseball Championship continues. All right. So for all of us here at Black and Gold Banneret, hopefully we'll see you down in Clearwater. If not, that's okay. You can catch us on the American Digital Network and right here at blackandgoldbanneret.com. Eric, Murph, you guys travel safe. I'll see you down there.
See ya, Jeffrey.
Here, boy.
All right. Thanks for listening. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We'll catch you later on this week.